The Harper family reunion invitation sat on my desk, its gold-embossed lettering glinting under the Los Angeles sunlight streaming through the penthouse's glass walls. I, John Harper, stared at it, a strange feeling rising within me. 15 years of careful concealment were about to end. And the irony was, I wasn't the one who decided it. I picked up my phone, reopening the email I'd just received from Fortune, 40 under 40, the new face of digital art. John Harper's NFT empire, valued at $4.20 billion. The article would be published 2 days before the family reunion on Harper Island, my private island near Hawaii. The wall I'd built between Harper Digital Ventures and my family, Father William, Mother Margaret, Brother Michael, Sister Sophie, was about to crumble, and I could do nothing to stop it. Before diving into the story, comment where you're watching from, and don't forget to subscribe so you won't miss the latest stories. I reread the email, each line like a sharp cut. Fortune praised me. But how shocked would my family be, the ones who thought I was scraping by in a tiny Santa Monica apartment, driving a beat-up Toyota Camry. They never asked about my work, never visited my exhibitions, only knew John, the dreamer, the one who wasted his UCLA finance degree to draw pictures on a computer, as Father William once said. This penthouse, with its Pacific Ocean view, Basquiat painting on the wall, and private helicopter parked at a nearby airfield, was my real world. But to the Harpers, I was the one who needed saving. Emily's voice came through the intercom. "Mr. Harper, your brother Michael is on line 1. Again, I smirked. Of course it was Michael. Ever since the press release went out, he hadn't stopped calling. I picked up, voice calm. "Hey Michael. What the hell is this, John?" Michael didn't bother with pleasantries, his voice roaring. "Business Week just called, asking me about my billionaire brother." "Explain yourself." I leaned back in my chair, gazing at the sparkling sea. "Wait for the article, Mike. Fortune will tell you everything." "Don't play games," he snapped. "You let the whole family think you were struggling for years. Mom's been worried sick." I couldn't hold back, laughing. "Worried? You mean the lectures about real jobs? The snide remarks about wasting my potential?" I paused, voice hardening. "Wait for the article, Mike." "Stop pretending," Michael shouted. "How long have you been hiding this?" I looked out at the Pacific, remembering the rundown Santa Monica apartment where I started 15 years ago. "Take a guess," I replied, voice cold. "I bet you'll find out when you get to Harper Island." I hung up before he could say more, a wave of satisfaction washing over me. Michael, the perfect older brother, always following father's plan, business school, MBA, a job at Harper Investments, was now panicking. And I, the one labeled a failure, was about to make the whole family real. I picked up the reunion invitation, my fingers tracing the gold-embossed paper. For 15 years I'd played the role they expected, the eccentric son, the starving artist, the one who needed guidance. At every family dinner, I listened to Sophie brag about her new Beverly Hills condo, or Michael talk about his $1 million deals. They looked at me with pity, as if I were a burden. But this time, on Harper Island, I'd be the one in control. I'd planned to make this reunion a shock they'd never forget. I pressed the intercom button. "Emily," I called. "Is everything ready?" "Yes, Mr. Harper," Emily replied. "The private jet is prepared. The Rolls-Royce will pick up the family. Harper Island has been upgraded, and the staff's non-disclosure agreements are in place." "Perfect," I said, fingers tapping the desk. "Make sure my name is painted on the helipad, big enough for them to see from the sky. And the Fortune article, I want it framed, hung all over the resort." "Understood," Emily responded, her voice slightly hesitant. She knew I was playing big. My phone buzzed. A text from Sophie. "John, is the Fortune article for real? Answer me." I ignored it. Sophie, always flaunting her wealth, would soon learn that her artist brother could buy her dream world with a day's interest. I walked to the glass wall, looking down at bustling Los Angeles. This city had seen me from the beginning, when I learned blockchain, sold my first NFT, and quietly built an empire. My family never understood, but now they'd have to face the truth. I closed my eyes, picturing them stepping off the plane, seeing my name on the island, and realizing how wrong they'd been. "Harper Island," I murmured, "where everything changes." I returned to the desk, pressing the intercom. "Emily, get the design team. I want the island to shine even brighter. This isn't just a reunion, it's the day I take back myself." I stood by the penthouse's glass wall, the Los Angeles sunlight illuminating the Harper family reunion invitation still on the desk. The Fortune email remained open on my phone, reminding me that in just days, my family would learn the truth about Harper Digital Ventures' billion-dollar empire. But my mind wasn't on Harper Island or the upcoming article. It was on a memory from 15 years ago. the moment I decided to hide my success. That moment began at a family dinner, when I, John Harper, 22 years old, tried to share my dream, only to be met with dismissal. I remember it vividly, the grand dining room in my parents' Beverly Hills mansion, the crystal chandelier casting light on the mahogany table. I just graduated from UCLA, with a finance degree, but instead of excitement for a job at Harper Investments, Father William's company, I was consumed by digital art. I'd sold my first NFT collection for $60,000, a huge sum for a recent grad. I thought my family would be proud, or at least curious. I was wrong. Dad, Mom, I began, voice eager. I just sold a digital art collection. $60,000. It's called an NFT, using blockchain technology to digital art, William interrupted, his voice like a hammer. You mean computer pictures? That's a scam, John. No one pays real money for that. I froze, my grip tightening on my utensils. No, Dad, it's not a scam. I sold them, and 3 galleries want to work with me. Margaret, my mother, placed her hand on mine, eyes full of concern. John, honey, we just want what's best for you. You have a finance degree from UCLA. Why not work with your father? A stable job, a real career. Real? I looked around the table, searching for a shred of support. Michael, my older brother, smirked, as if I'd told a bad joke. Sophie, my younger sister, didn't even look up from her phone, muttering about reserving a table at a fancy restaurant. No one cared. No one wanted to hear. I don't need Dad's job, I said, voice trembling with anger. I'm building something new. Digital art is the future. Enough. William slammed his hand on the table, making the wine glasses rattle. Digital art isn't real art, John. Either you work for the family company as planned, or you're on your own. No support, no backing. I looked at him, then at Mom, Michael, Sophie. Dad's face was full of disappointment. Mom frowned with worry. Michael smirked, and Sophie clearly didn't care. That was the moment I realized, they didn't just doubt my dream, they doubted me. They'd mapped out my path, a clone of Michael, the golden son with an MBA and a director's chair at Dad's company. But I wasn't Michael, and I didn't want their path. Fine, I said, standing voice cold. I'll find my own way. I left the table, ignoring their pitying looks, and Mom's whisper, he's just going through a phase. 2 weeks later, I moved into a rundown apartment in Santa Monica, the smallest, cheapest place I could find. My family thought I was struggling, living off savings, too proud to admit failure. In reality, I was building an empire. That $60,000 NFT collection was just the start. I worked 18 hours a day, learning blockchain, connecting with tech investors in Silicon Beach. 6 months later, I sold my second collection for $250,000. By the time Dad told everyone at Christmas dinner that I was going through a phase, I had my first million in the bank. But I said nothing. Not out of fear, but because I wanted them to be wrong. Completely wrong. Every snide remark, every pitying glance from Michael or Sophie, every lecture from Dad about responsibility, only fueled me. I kept the Toyota Camry, wore old t-shirts, when visiting home, letting them believe I was failing. Meanwhile, I bought this penthouse, collected Basquiat paintings, and quietly turned Harper Digital Ventures into a powerhouse in digital art. I closed my eyes, picturing my family's stunned faces when John Harper appeared on the helipad, boldly painted on polished stone, gleaming under the bright Hawaiian sun on my private island. 15 years of hurt, 15 years of being underestimated, of being called a failure. It would all end here, on the land I'd built myself. I didn't just want them to know I'd succeeded. I wanted them to understand I'd gone so far beyond their limits, that I'd reached places they never dared dream. And I'd done it right under their noses, while they whispered their criticisms. In their eyes, I was forever just John, the failed artist with the rusty Toyota Camry, living in a shabby Santa Monica apartment. My father, William, always stern and cold. My mother, Margaret, never hid her disappointed gaze. My brother, Michael, barely spoke to me unless out of courtesy. And my sister, Sophie, always looked at me like I was the family's burden. They had no idea that, all this time, I'd quietly turned the digital art they mocked as a joke into a global empire. Every stroke, every idea, every sleepless night became the bricks of a billion-dollar fortune. Now, all their doubts, their dismissive shrugs, the times they ignored me without asking, would be replaced by awe. Not because I wanted revenge, but because I'd waited too long for this moment, for them to not just see me, but to look up. It all started in that small apartment, where I moved after that fateful family dinner. I worked non-stop, 18 hours a day, learning blockchain, experimenting with NFT platforms, and connecting with pioneers in Silicon Beach. That first $60,000 NFT collection was a turning point. I reinvested the money, hired a freelance coder, and 6 months later, my second collection, Binary Visions, sold for $250,000. By the time William told everyone at Christmas dinner that I was going through a phase, I had my first million in the bank. But I said nothing. I wanted them to be wrong, utterly wrong. I kept up the poor John facade for the family, driving the rusty Toyota, wearing faded t-shirts when visiting home. In reality, I was building another world. A year later, I launched Pixel Vault, an NFT platform, letting artists sell directly, bypassing traditional galleries. Pixel Vault exploded, bringing in $1.2 million an hour. I used the money to open an office in Silicon Beach, hire engineers, and start collecting art, a Basquiat worth more than Sophie's Beverly Hills condo. My family knew nothing. Every visit home, I heard the same lines. "John, when are you going to get a real job?" Margaret asked, voice worried. "At least let me help with rent." William shook his head, disappointed. "He's still dreaming with his computer pictures," Sophie bragged, always finding ways to mention she paid for her poor artist brother's meals. I smiled, nodded, letting them believe I was struggling. But inside, I counted every slight, turning them into fuel. My success didn't come easily. I faced a rival, Lucas Reed, another Los Angeles NFT artist, who tried to discredit me, spreading rumors that my collections were scams. Lucas once emailed a threat. "This market's not big enough for both of us, Harper." I didn't respond, just worked harder. I launched Digital Horizons, which sold for $3 million, and Pixel Vault became the leading platform, leaving Lucas forgotten. I learned silence and results were the best response. While my family thought I lived off savings, I bought this penthouse, with a Pacific view and interiors any billionaire would envy. I got a private helicopter, a Lamborghini in a secret garage, and an island, Harper Island, near Hawaii, where I'd host the reunion. But to them, I was still John, refusing loans, despite Mom's constant offers. "John, let me help with rent." I always replied, "No need, Mom. I'm fine." Fine. I'd surpassed that word. My wealth hit $10 million after 3 years, then $100 million by year 5. I remember one time vividly, when Sophie generously paid for dinner at a fancy restaurant, making sure everyone knew she was helping her poor brother. "John, it's okay," she said, tone condescending. "I can cover it." I nodded, feigning gratitude, but in my head, I calculated that meal was less than the interest I earned in a minute. Michael wasn't better, always bragging about his latest deal at Harper Investments, as if I needed to learn from him. "John, whenever you're ready, I can find you a spot at the company," he said, eyes pitying. I just smiled. "Thanks, Mike. I'm fine." But the truth was, I wasn't just fine. I was one of the richest people in Los Angeles, and no one in my family knew. I refused every loan offer, not out of pride, but because I didn't need it. When Mom offered help, I once said, "Mom, if you want, invest in my company." William laughed. "Invest in computer pictures? Never." I didn't argue, just remember. If he'd invested $1 million then, it'd be worth $100 million now. I pressed the intercom. "Emily," I called, voice firm, "check the Harper Island plans again. I want everything perfect. And tell the design team to make my name pop on the island." "Understood, Mr. Harper," Emily replied. "Anything else?" "Just one thing," I said, gazing at the sea. "Make sure they feel the truth the moment they land." I just set the Harper family reunion invitation back on the desk, my fingers still tracing the gold embossed paper, when my phone buzzed, shattering the penthouse's silence. Michael's name flashed on the screen, and I knew he wasn't calling to check on me. After 15 years of building Harper Digital Ventures in secret, hiding a fortune nearing $5.50 billion, though Fortune was about to report $4.20 billion, I was ready to reveal everything at the reunion on Harper Island. But the news had leaked early, and my family, Father William, Mother Margaret, Brother Michael, Sister Sophie, were reeling. Just as I'd predicted, I answered, voice as calm as ever. "Hey Mike, what's up now?" "What the hell is this, John?" Michael bellowed, his voice nearly breaking the speaker. "Wired just called, asking about my billionaire brother." "Explain yourself, now, or you'll what?" I cut in, voice icy. "Wait for the Fortune article, Mike. It'll all be clear. Don't mess around," he yelled. "You let Mom think you were struggling. Let Dad think you were a failure. The press says you've got billions. How long have you been hiding this?" I laughed, not out of amusement, but at the irony, worried. "You mean the times Mom offered to pay my rent, or Dad lectured me about wasting my life?" I didn't hide, Mike. You all just didn't look. Don't dodge, Michael snapped. You Devon, you let the whole family think you're a failure. You owe me an explanation. Owe you? I replied, voice hardening. I only owe myself. Come to Harper Island, and you'll understand. I hung up before he could say more. Satisfaction surging. Michael, always boasting about his million-dollar deals at Harper Investments, was now unraveling because of me. The one he called delusional. I pictured him in his plush Beverly Hills office, face red with rage, and I liked the feeling more than I expected. Before I could set the phone down, the intercom buzzed. Mr. Harper, Emily, my assistant, said, voice tense. Your mother, Mrs. Margaret, is in the lobby. She's very insistent on seeing you. I checked the security feed. Margaret, still in a flawless designer dress, but with frantic eyes, was arguing with the guard. Let her up, I sighed, knowing this confrontation was inevitable. I walked to the bar, poured a glass of water, and braced for the emotional storm coming. The elevator doors opened, and Margaret swept into the penthouse like a gust, then froze. She looked around, marble floors, Pacific Ocean views, a Basquiat worth more than her house. John, she gasped, voice trembling. What is this? My home, I said, handing her the water. Not the Santa Monica apartment I kept for family visits. She stepped to the glass wall, her hand shaking around the glass. How long? How could you? She trailed off, as if unable to believe her eyes. 15 years, I said, sitting on the sofa, voice calm but sharp. Since the day Dad called my digital art a scam, said it'd never amount to anything. Margaret turned, face a mix of shock and hurt. But you were struggling, John. We saw it. The tiny apartment, that old car. You even let me think you needed rent money. I never needed money, I corrected, meeting her eyes. I asked if you and Dad wanted to invest in my company. Dad laughed. You agreed with him. The apartment, the Toyota, that was a roll. I chose it, just like I chose this penthouse. The private helicopter was in the island, where we'll have the reunion. Island? Her voice broke. My God, John, how rich are you? I smiled, recalling the dinners when Sophie generously paid for my meals, or Michael flaunted deals, to imply I was useless. Fortune will say $4.2 billion, I replied, but it's closer to $5.5 billion. She made a choked sound, hand clutching her chest. Why didn't you say anything? Why did you let me worry? Because you didn't ask, I said, voice unrelenting. No one came to my shows. No one Googled my name. You wanted to believe I was failing, and I let you. I stood, walking to the desk. I have a meeting now, Mom. I'll see you all at Harper Island. I'm thinking French appetizers. I escorted her to the elevator, her eyes still dazed. As the doors closed, my phone pinged with a new email, from Henry Wong, Dad's partner. John, we should discuss collaboration opportunities. Harper Investments is impressed with your art platform. I laughed. 3 years ago, Henry kicked me out of his office, saying internet art isn't worth a dime. Now he wants a piece of Harper Digital Ventures. I hit the intercom. Emily, how's Harper Island coming? Yes, Mr. Harper, Emily replied. Private jet, Rolls-Royce, resort. All ready. The document listing the family's investment rejections is prepared. Great, I said, picking up the reunion invitation. Make sure the Fortune article is hung everywhere on the island. I want them to see it at every turn. I stood up from my chair, quietly stepping to the bookshelf by the large glass window. Morning light streamed through the clear panes, casting a soft golden glow on the oak. I reached for an old, slightly dusty photo frame. Inside was a family picture, taken at a lavish Beverly Hills dinner over a decade ago. I still remember that day, when I tried explaining NFTs to the family, something almost no one understood then, let alone believed in. I spoke about blockchain, the value of digital assets, how art was entering a new era. But within 3 minutes, my father, William, raised his hand, coldly cutting me off. John, don't let people fool you with that garbage. No one defended me. Michael chuckled, raising an eyebrow with a mocking jab. You really think you'll be the Picasso of the internet? Waste of talent. Waste of effort. And Sophie sat there, casually bragging about her brand new West Hollywood condo, talking about Italian furniture, floor-to-ceiling windows, and city views, as if I were a kid freeloading at the table. I held the frame, staring long and hard. Each word from that memory now echoed like a hammer in my mind. But they no longer hurt. They only strengthened my conviction about why I'd done everything in silence. Those moments of dismissal drove me to build Harper Digital Ventures, quietly, relentlessly, and unknown to anyone. For 15 years, I maintained the facade of a failure, living in a tiny Santa Monica apartment, driving an old Toyota Camry, wearing faded t-shirts and cheap shoes. I let them believe I was scraping by because I needed time. I needed space to grow quietly, until the day I no longer had to prove anything. In reality, I owned this penthouse where I now stood, overlooking the city from the 40th floor, the private helicopter waiting at the helipad, and an NFT empire worth billions they never knew about. I recalled one particular dinner. Sophie, with a condescending smile, slid her credit card across the table, loud enough for everyone to hear. "It's fine, John. I'll cover it. What do you even do with your money?" I nodded, pretending gratitude, my voice soft as if genuinely thankful. But in my head, I was thinking of my bank account, an 8-figure sum, larger than her entire year's income. Michael was always gracious. Every time we met, he'd make a show of kindness, offering to help by pulling me into Dad's company, as if I needed saving. "John, I can get you a spot in marketing. You can't live like this forever." I'd just smile, shake my head. "Thanks, Mike. I'm fine." But now, I'd show them what fine really meant. I returned to the desk, opened my laptop. A new email from the Harper Island design team waited in my inbox. I clicked. Mock-up images appeared. John Harper painted in giant white letters on the helipad, stark against the blue sky and sea. LED screens around the resort showcasing my $1 million NFT collection. The Fortune cover article framed elegantly, lining the main corridor. I could vividly picture my family stepping off the plane. Michael freezing, Sophie gaping, Mom gasping wordlessly, and Dad, maybe he'd stay silent. But this time, not out of disappointment, but because he'd finally understand. I hadn't just succeeded. I'd soared beyond anything they ever thought possible. And I'd done it, quietly, with all the pride of someone who'd been underestimated. I hit the intercom again. "Emily, one more request. I want a slideshow in the dining room, listing every milestone of Harper Digital Ventures next to every time the family called me a failure. Sync it with the island's screens." "Understood, sir," Emily replied. "Anything else?" "Just one thing," I said, eyeing the reunion invitation. "Make sure everything's ready before they arrive. I want them to feel the truth the moment they step foot on the island." I stood in the control room on Harper Island, watching the security monitors as the private jet landed. The Harper family, Father William, Mother Margaret, Brother Michael, Sister Sophie, and Aunt Claire Bennett, stepped off, their eyes flickering between shock and disbelief. John Harper blazed in giant white letters on the helipad, radiant under the Hawaiian sun, and massive screens around the resort displayed my NFT collection, each piece worth millions. The Fortune article, announcing my $4.2 billion fortune, really closer to $5.50 billion, was framed and hung throughout the main hall. They were led to the grand dining room, where I waited. The long wooden table was set impeccably, with fine wine and the French appetizers I'd chosen to needle Sophie's taste for luxury. Wall screens played a timeline of Harper Digital Ventures, synced with documents at each seat, listing every time the family rejected my investment offers, alongside their current value. I wore a bespoke suit, standing at the table's head, smiling as they entered. William led, his face taut, eyes scanning the screens. Margaret clung to his arm, still dazed from seeing my penthouse. Michael, usually cocky, was silent, fists clenched. Sophie, in a glittering designer dress, looked around in panic. Only Aunt Claire, with a subtle smile, seemed unsurprised. They sat, no one speaking, the air heavy as before a storm. "Welcome to Harper Island," I began, voice calm but cutting. "Thanks for coming. I think it's time we talked openly." "John, what is this?" William demanded, voice trembling with anger. "This island, the article, what's it all about?" I gestured to the screen behind me. The timeline began. 2008, William Harper says digital art is a scam. Harper Digital Ventures hits $10 million. I paused, locking eyes with him. "Remember that night, Dad? When you told me to get a real job?" William stiffened, silent. I continued. 2010, Margaret Harper offers to pay my rent. My net worth reaches $50 million. I looked at Mom, her eyes dropping. 2015, Sophie Harper pays for her poor brother's dinner. My net worth surpasses $500 million. Sophie flushed, head bowed, clutching her napkin. Michael glared, as if wanting to speak but finding no words. I pointed to the screen. 2018, Michael Harper offers me a job at Harper Investments. Harper Digital Ventures hits $1 billion. Enough, John. William slammed the table, wine glasses rattling. What do you want? To humiliate us? No, I said, voice icy. I want you to admit you were wrong. 15 years, and no one asked about my work. No one came to my shows. No one Googled my name. You wanted to believe I was failing, and I let you. But this, I gestured to the screens, is the truth. Margaret sobbed, voice choked. John, I just wanted to help you. I didn't know. I cut in, unrelenting. You didn't ask, Mom. No one did. I talked about NFTs, my dreams, but Dad called them a scam. Michael mocked me. Sophie was too busy bragging about her condo. I don't need apologies. I need you to see what you missed. Silence fell. Sophie mumbled, I didn't mean it, John. I just thought. She trailed off, finding no excuse. Michael stared down, fists tight. William looked at me, eyes torn between anger and shame. Suddenly, Aunt Claire spoke, voice soft. I went to your show, John. In Santa Monica, when you launched Binary Visions. You didn't know I was there. But I was so proud. I froze, for the first time tonight, caught off guard. Aunt Claire. I paused, at a loss. She was the only one who'd care, even in secret. I regained composure, turning to the final screen. Today, Harper Digital Ventures worth $5.5 billion. Harper Island, private jet, penthouse, all mine. No loans, no help. I scanned the table, voice deliberate. You were wrong, and I proved it. William stood, as if to speak, then sat back down, silent. Margaret wiped tears. Sophie hid her face. Michael stared out the window. I stood there, relief spreading through me. Let's eat, I said, taking my seat at the table's head. We have the whole weekend to talk. I raised my glass, smiling, knowing they'd see me differently now. Harper Island wasn't just a reunion, it was where I reclaimed myself. The next day, I led the family on a tour of Harper Island. I walked ahead, pointing out the modern resort, the private beach with pristine white sand, and the NFT gallery, where screens showed works William once called scams. This is Digital Horizons, I said, gesturing to a piece sold for $3 million. It started from the idea Dad dismissed. William lowered his head, silent, but his eyes softened. Margaret walked beside me, voice quiet. John, I'm proud of you. I just wish I'd asked sooner. I nodded, saying nothing. Her words were sincere, but I still felt distance. I took them to the central hall, where I shared Pixel Vault 2.0, a new $12 billion project revolutionizing digital art with AI and blockchain. Sophie, usually boastful, stayed quiet, eyes wide at the project's scale. Michael, often mocking, asked a technical question. How do you ensure platform security? I answered in detail, and for the first time I saw him nod, as if admitting I knew my stuff. William pulled me aside after the presentation. He handed me a letter, his familiar handwriting, on thick paper. John, he said, voice low, I was wrong. You revolutionized an industry, and I was blind. Read it when you're ready. I took the letter, unopened, and nodded. His apology was a start, but I wasn't ready to fully forgive. Aunt Claire, the only one who'd attended my show, took my hand. You did good, John, she whispered. This family needed you to wake up. I smiled, a rare warmth stirring inside. That afternoon, I offered the family a small stake in Pixel Vault 2.0, not because I needed them, but to test if they'd changed. Margaret and Sophie agreed eagerly. Michael hesitated, then nodded. William only said, give me time, John. I didn't push. I'd learned I didn't need their validation to be myself. As sunset fell, I stood alone on the beach, waves lapping at my feet. I opened William's letter. He wrote of pride, of regret for forcing his path on me, and hope for reconciliation. I folded it, gazing at the sea. For 15 years, I'd fought to prove them wrong, but now I realized, my greatest victory wasn't shaming them, but living true to my vision. I returned to the villa, seeing my family laughing on the balcony. Sophie told a funny story. Michael laughed loudly. Margaret hugged Claire. I stood at a distance, freedom washing over me. I still kept space, especially from Michael, but I wasn't angry anymore. Harper Island had changed something, not just in them, but in me. I texted Emily, prep the jet. We're heading back to Los Angeles tomorrow. I knew, no matter how my family changed, my journey continued, not to prove, but to build. That morning my phone pinged with news. Pixel Vault 2.0, the $12 billion project I'd unveiled on the island, launched successfully, pushing Harper Digital Ventures to $6 billion. I smiled, unsurprised. This project, blending AI and blockchain to revolutionize digital art, proved my vision. I texted Emily, "Schedule a board meeting. We're accelerating phase 2. She replied instantly, "Yes, Mr. Harper, congratulations." I didn't need congratulations. I'd been congratulating myself for years. I stood, walked to the bookshelf, and took out William's letter to reread. He wrote of pride, regret for forcing his path, and hope for healing. On the island, Margaret said she was proud. Sophie apologized for bragging. Michael wanted a fresh start, and Claire revealed she'd secretly attended my show. They'd changed, at least partly, but I no longer needed their approval. For 15 years I'd fought to prove them wrong, to rise above their pitying looks. Sophie's and Michael's jabs, William's lectures. But on Harper Island, I realized my greatest victory wasn't humiliating them, but building my empire my way. Despite it all, I hung the letter back up, next to the invoice for my first NFT. 2 pieces of my journey. The invoice reminded me of 18-hour days in that Santa Monica apartment when my family thought I was struggling. The letter reminded me that, though they were wrong, they were still family. I hadn't fully forgiven. Michael still made me wary, but I wasn't angry. I'd found freedom in being myself, not the person they wanted. I stepped onto the balcony, the Los Angeles sea breeze carrying the Pacific salt. This city had seen me from the start, when I learned blockchain, faced rivals like Lucas Reed, and turned ideas into billions. My family didn't understand, but now they knew. The Fortune article didn't just reveal my wealth. It confirmed I was right, that digital art was the future. I looked down at bustling Los Angeles, heart steady. Pixel Vault 2.0 was just the next step. I'd planned bigger projects, ideas that would turn heads worldwide. I was done hiding, done playing the failure to appease my family. I was John Harper, pioneer, builder, winner on my terms. I turned back inside, picking up the Harper family reunion invitation. Now just a piece of paper. Harper Island had changed everything, not just for my family, but for me. I set it down, sending Emily one last text. Prep the helicopter. I want to see the new Silicon Beach office tomorrow morning. I knew, whatever the past, the future was mine, and I'd keep building, not for anyone else, but for myself. The story of John Harper, in asterisk. After 15 years of silent success, my family finally discovered my net worth. Asterisk reflects the values and challenges of life in the United States today, particularly in the context of startup culture, family pressures, and personal pursuit. John, a pioneer in the NFT space, built Harper Digital Ventures into a $5.5 billion empire. From a rundown Santa Monica apartment, despite his family's doubts, Father William called NFTs a scam. Mother Margaret worried. Brother Michael mocked, and sister Sophie flaunted her wealth. He maintained a poor facade for 15 years, driving an old Toyota Camry, only to reveal the truth on Harper Island, shocking and transforming his family. John's journey embodies the American spirit, perseverance, innovation, and belief in a personal vision, even when faced with skepticism. In today's US, where technologies like blockchain and AI shape the futures, the story underscores that success often demands silent sacrifice and the courage to go against the grain. Believe in your vision, but brace for loneliness and misunderstanding along the way. John didn't quit, despite his family's rejection of his NFT ideas. Much like many Silicon Valley entrepreneurs face early setbacks. Learn to ignore criticism, as John did with Michael and William, and focus on building real value, like his Pixel Vault 2.0. But don't let success estrange you from family forever. John opened a door for reconciliation on Harper Island, showing forgiveness can heal. Ultimately, as John realized on that Los Angeles balcony, true victory is living authentically, not proving others wrong. In America's individualist culture, chase your dreams, but stay connected to loved ones to keep success meaningful. Subscribe to the channel to catch more inspiring stories like John Harper's journey and explore more secrets to success. Thanks for watching. See you in the next video.